Hello from ACUI. My name is Spencer Giese. I'm a research and education specialist with ACUI, and I'm happy to bring you our virtual roundtable with senior housing officers this week. This is our dedicated time to really connect as a group of professionals from spanning many campuses, many campus types, many student populations, and a chance to really share what's going on our campuses, sharing feedback, sharing ideas, sharing resources, and really to hear from you all, our members, right where you are, dealing with the issues that you are when it comes to COVID-19. I am joined by 4 outstanding co-facilitators that we will get to in just a moment. But before we get there, we've got some online resources I want to make you all aware of. We have a number of YouTube recordings of our previous virtual roundtables, so please take a look at that on our ACUI YouTube channel. We have dedicated threads in our ACUI online community based on COVID-19 response. So please, if you have questions that don't get answered today, or you just want to see of resources that have been posted, take a look there. And we also have a COVID-19 resources page that's dedicated on our ACUI websites. Our co-facilitators today, Dee, Drew, Kathy, and Ray, we're going to hear from them more in just a moment. But first, I want to really cover how we're going to have this session work out today for us all. This is not your typical webinar where we're going to go through a bunch of slides. Instead, this is a conversation that is really audience participation based. As attendees, I need you all to be willing to share topics you'd want to discuss, questions that you have, and a willingness to share ideas of things you may be experiencing or strategies that you have on your campuses. So really, this is your opportunity to connect with others on this webinar outside of just our co-facilitators. You should see a Q&A tab on your Zoom menu. That Q&A tab is your place to submit questions that you'd like to see answered over the course of our time together. A brief note, questions that are submitted in the Q&A tab are visible to everyone, our facilitators and our attendees. So if you do post there, just know that people are going to see that. So we ask that you put your name, position, institution as you post the question. And you all as attendees have the opportunity to type in your answers or comments to a question that is in the thread. Pretty neat. You also have the opportunity to upvote questions. So if you see a question posed, you're like, I really want to hear that answered, you can upvote that, and that will come to the top of our question and answer list to make sure we touch on those topics. We also have a raised hand function that you should be seeing there. And we're going to test it out right now to make sure that you're having your audio and your video come through right now. You should be seeing a PowerPoint slide. You should be hearing us talk. If you could just hit the raised hand function to show that, yes, your video is coming through, your audio is coming through, that'd be helpful. And I'm seeing a lot of hands come up. I'm glad to see the system's working again today. I'm going to lower those hands. We will use that later. I'll be asking a couple of times in this session for audience to really give feedback and ideas. To raise your hand if you'd like to share an idea on that topic, and that will be your chance to raise your hand and then get called on, and we'll have you answer those topics live in our virtual roundtable. Also, if you type in a question, I may reach out to you in chat and say, hey, would you be willing to ask that question live to our panel? So we'd love the interaction there. Okay, so let's get started. And before we dive into those questions that you may be submitting, let's hear from our co-facilitators, get to know them a little bit more. So I'm going to ask each of you to do a brief introduction of yourselves, and let's talk about what COVID-19 responses looked like on your campuses so far. Dee, I'll have you start us out.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dee Allard. I serve as the Executive Director for Housing and Residence Life at Mississippi State University. And where we're at right now is restricting students from being on campus. We have a housing intent form to collect and gather those who have need to continue to live on campus. We're encouraging others to depart. And we're trying to figure out what the next steps are in consolidation.
Thanks, Dee. Drew.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Drew Peterson. I'm the Associate Dean of Students and Director of Residence Life at Presbyterian College. I'm also the Small Colleges and Universities Director for the Akuhoai Executive Board, so shout out to my small school folks. On our campus, we are online through April 14th, but given the announcement from the governor a couple days ago that public K through 12 schools are going to be online through the end of April, I anticipate we're going to be staying online as well. Most of our students have departed. We have about 7% of our students still here. And then as we make that announcement that we're going to be online, we'll be working to shrink that number even further. Of course, taking care of our housing insecure folks to the best of our ability and making sure everybody has a safe place to go. Our dining is also takeout only on campus. So that's where we're at for now. But much like everybody else, it seems like we're changing by the day.
True. Kathy.
Thanks. Greetings, colleagues. Here at Clemson University, we are at day 27 of contiguous emergency operations. We have that number up in the corner of our emergency operations call that we do daily at 10 and 3 as we continue to keep our arms around evolving happenings. On campus here, I have responsibility for university housing, campus dining, and the campus bookstores. So within each of those roles, we've been navigating to make sure that we're taking as good a care of students as we can, but also making the right decisions as it relates to the public health condition. So I mentioned we were on day 27. I took a moment to look back in terms of markers in time since then. On March 11th, 3 days before our students left for spring break, we put out a note to them to say, we're not going to online just yet, but that might happen while you're gone for spring break. So take home with you anything that you need academically for the rest of the semester or any medical supplies that you might need. So that was on Wednesday. On Sunday of spring break, our governor made the decision that everybody was going to need to be, all of our public institutions would need to be closed at least through the end of March. And we made the decision to do online education through April the 5th. And then starting this past Sunday, our governor issued another dictate for public schools in South Carolina that will be closed through the end of the academic semester, essentially. So we're trying to settle into new normal here to see what that looks like for us here. Today is day 3 of online education. And we have about 474 students that are still in residence with us. That's about 6% of our usual on-campus population. And that's a smattering of international students, of students that have, for socioeconomic reasons, no place to go, or students that don't have appropriate internet or other supplies at home to help them continue to do their academic work remotely.
Thanks, Kathy. And Ray.
Good afternoon. My name is Ray Gasser. I serve as the Executive Director for Residence Education and Housing Services at Michigan State University. Back in the beginning of March, we started moving towards developing, at the request of the institution, self-isolation housing. So we have a property apartment community that we would put people that were coming back internationally to campus into self-isolation housing. We started that on March 6th. On March 11th, our president announced that we would be going to online classes for about a month. Within a few days, he extended that through the entire semester. So that started where he promoted students returning to their homes if they could. By March 16th, we had determined that we would be issuing some level of refunding for those that lived with us that would head home before April 12th. And on March 23rd, our governor announced that there was a shelter in place through April 15th, I believe, because from I think it was roughly about 2 weeks ago, the state of Michigan had 0 cases confirmed in the state. We're now up to almost 3,000 cases in the state. So we're now the 5th highest in the country. So this has blossomed rather quickly.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Ray. And thank you to all our co-facilitators for joining us. We appreciate your time, your energy, and your content that you'll be sharing with us today. Again, just to reiterate, this is really going to be a session that is successful based on audience participation And really, we want you to help guide where we go in terms of our conversation. So I already see a few of you have started listing some questions in our Q&A. I hope that can continue over the course of our time. And certainly, I'm just going to dive in and pose a few of those questions to our group. So first of all, we talked about some of those numbers of students who have been remaining on campuses. I heard 6%, I heard 7%. Jason asked a great question in terms of those campuses that are closing. Are you making exceptions for students that would need to go home to a high-risk area? We heard socioeconomic or maybe not a place to go, but what about if home is New York City?
That was one of our criteria as well. We did, since most of our students were on break, on spring break when the announcement was made, we did a sort of quick Google survey with them, and there were sort of 4 categories you could pick from. One was I have no internet at home, I can't do my academic work at home. One was I'm an international student. One was home is not a safe place for me, and we left that sort of a broad category of medical versus whatever a student wanted to share. And then we had just a blank open space. We did have a number of students, international students that we had just brought back from study abroad the week before, where we had a student studying abroad in Hungary, where home is really China, and she, like, this is where she had to go. So we worked through all of those pieces. We were relatively generous. There were a number, we had, I think, 1,100 students request to stay, and we said yes to about 475 of those.
We didn't specify any specific reason. If a student felt like they needed to stay on campus, we've been willing to accommodate. So regardless of what their reason is, what we're finding is most of them have chosen to go home. So we're still at roughly between 1,500 and 2,000 students still living on campus, but we also have a population of over 15,000 that live at Michigan State.
Our reasons for students staying were pretty similar to Kathy's. Yes, we have made exceptions for students who are going back to areas where it seems like it was hitting hardest. We've also made exceptions for students who have family members at home who are immunocompromised, and we considered what that might do having another person, particularly a college-age student, in and out of the house. And so we've made some exceptions for that as well.
Mississippi State is similar to the exceptions that have already been discussed. Transportation was another one for us, as well as locations. For example, one of our RAs is from the Washington State area, so that was not a good location for them to go back to.
Thank you all for sharing that. Great content. Some really great approaches there. So thank you. This is already a topic that's gotten a couple upvotes and some comments on it. Julie McMahon asks, as students are checking out, is anyone disinfecting keys if you're using brass keys in your system? And if you are disinfecting keys, what product is recommended?
This is Kathy. We have not been disinfecting keys, but we've also had our desk staff, our desks actually have been closed for the last 2 weeks. Anybody that's handling keys as they take them back from students or give them out to students is wearing gloves.
Our team's also wearing gloves when they're handling keys. The one product that we have been utilizing, we're not directly disinfecting keys that I'm aware of, but what we are doing is that we're using O3, which is our cleaner for most of our halls. It's actually a disinfectant, viral disinfectant. We're actually spraying residence halls, so we've purchased about 40 of these misters, and we go down the hallways and into public common area spaces. We started this a couple weeks ago to try to show students that we're trying to make it as safe of an environment as possible.
We actually have tried to just avoid touching keys as much as possible. So we've actually left the key envelopes in the residence halls and are having students leave their keys in their room if they are taking all of their stuff with them. And then we will go back through and collect them after they have been there for a while. all the things that we've been seeing from the CDC say that the virus, lasts, hours, not days, on metal products. So we figure if we keep them in the key envelopes and keep them where they are and we're not all handling them, that's probably our safest approach.
And Mississippi State has been doing something similar. Not touching keys for 24 hours is the goal, and allowing students to hand off keys through envelopes. And so express envelopes are available to the desk areas. They put the key in, they leave it in a drop box, and we take care of it a few hours later.
So, and I've also heard on our previous virtual roundtables we've had that, again, key drop boxes I've heard quite a few times, and I think there are some key drop boxes out there that have had keys in them they plan on a couple weeks of them being there. So, and then I can tell you in the question answer area, that topic is getting a lot of other content added to it. So I've seen bleach, gloves only, wiping them down, offering desk staff gloves. So feel free to continue chiming in there if you were an attendee and you've got some viewpoints there to share. Next, I have Isaiah on the line. Isaiah, if you could, and webcam too, you're killing it today, Isaiah. Isaiah, if you could just introduce yourself and then share your question with our group, that'd be great.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Isaiah Thomas, Assistant Dean, Director of Residence Life, Housing and Student Conduct at Occidental College here in Los Angeles. My question is just how are we just continuing to support the needs of our live-in staff, just with the variability of everything going on?
I'll jump in because the silence was killing me. I think that we're trying to do a lot of different things. One is to show the live-in staff as well as all the staff that are working in the halls right now. I tend to think that I have an easier job because I'm not in the in as high a traffic area right now, being in an office building that's pretty sparse in terms of population. The one thing that we're doing is trying to constantly clean and make sure surfaces are wiped down, spraying down, disinfectant over all areas to kind of support the staff and letting them know that we're trying to make it as safe as possible. Two, we're trying to encourage them to shelter in place as the governor has asked. And so because we're continuing to diminish our numbers, we're not asking as much of the live-in staff. And where we can, we're calling students. So one of the things that we're doing is getting our res ed staff to call students rather than direct contact with them. So we're trying to get a better sense, because if you heard my numbers earlier, we don't have a good sense yet of exactly how many students have left and how many have stayed. We have a approximate, but because this happened so quickly, we weren't able to completely get our program all strategized in terms of this kind of unprecedented crisis.
Thanks for going first, Ray, and jumping in there for us. I would add a couple of things to that. One of the things that I've been trying to do is to battle what's actually a pretty common assumption on most campuses, is that people think, well, the res living staff will just do that, as opposed to really thinking through, is what we're asking an appropriate role for a residential living staff member based on what we currently know. So we actually did a call with our Director of Environmental Health and Safety, where our res living team got to ask questions about, well, if we're asked to do this, what's the relative risk to me? I think I can tell them all day long, oh, I wouldn't worry about that, or oh, just make sure you have gloves. But getting to ask questions of somebody who epidemiology and environmental health and safety is their business, I think did what can be done to help allay some of those fears and anxieties in general. One of the other things that I always try to do is make sure that I'm seeing things from other people's perspective. My good friend Tony Coffin always says that there's a reason for every chair at the table, and the view is different from every seat. So I've tried to put myself in scenarios where I'm listening and hearing with their ears. So one of the things that I did was I went back to Kuhoi's YouTube channel and I listened to the live-in staff version of this webinar and to the mid-level managers webinar, just to listen from their perspective and to see if I could learn anything about what was happening with them. I'm also not sleeping well, so that was a good use of that time.
I think the points brought up so far have been really good ones. I will say the one thing, being at a small school, that I was able to do that I think my staff probably appreciated the most was we forwarded the duty phones to one duty phone because we have so many fewer students on campus. And I've actually held the duty phone for the last 3 nights. So just so that when they went home at the end of the night, they could just relax and take some time for themselves and their own self-care in whatever way that was. So, you know, wherever you can kind of step in and do duty as well, that is always something that our staff appreciate.
And for us, we just called back the RAs on Sunday. And so they're just getting into the big fold of on-call responsibilities and things of that nature. So they're not quite there yet, but I love the ideas and suggestions of what we can do to help them minimize their concerns and fears. We are just taking a lot of that in and hearing what they have to say, trying to put some strategies like gloves and other things in the area, going through the CDC recommendations and talking about what those could be and how we need to take care of ourselves and our area has been our strategy so far.
Thanks, all. And a couple things I would add just from previous virtual roundtables. I had the opportunity to moderate the live-in staff one last week, and I can tell you there were quite a few concerns with that group just in terms of spaces they were being put in, or the feeling of what their job felt like in terms of anxiety from that. And then seeing some staff support maybe move to a work from home model based on campus mandates and then still being on campus in the thick of it and how that felt. So I would just encourage everyone to continue to consider what that's like if you are in a work from home setting and you have live-in staff members in what we might call the front lines of working with students face to face in a really trying time. We also, and I'll do a plug, we have our next virtual roundtable. Our first virtual roundtable next week will actually be on Wednesday, and that will be with the Higher Education Case Management Association. Will be partnering on that with us, and we're going to be talking a lot about stress and stress management in that, and that'll be Wednesday, 3 p.m. of next week. Again, that's the Higher Education Case Management Association that'll be joining us. So mark your calendars, hold that time, if you will, and hopefully we can dive into this topic area a bit more there. If we take a look at, and I applaud those of you who are on the Q&A chat and you are adding content and sharing ideas with other people's questions. So I know a few of you jumped on there on Isaiah's thread and were able to share some support and some ideas there too. So appreciate that. And I would say, you know, if we could take this support question one step further with our co-facilitators and talk about where the student staff roles reside currently. Do we still have student staff on your campuses? Did they help facilitate a move out process, then leave? Were they exempt from that and just allowed to move out like your traditional students were? What did that look like? What does that currently look like?
The vast majority of our student staff have headed home. They moved out. We really didn't feel like it was a situation where there was any sort of anything that we could hold them to. The president had put out his remarks, and so we lost a lot of our grads as well as our RAs related to that. In terms of move out process, we're relying more on our full-time staff. Our facility staff is helping out. Our operations staff, and so it's really a team effort. It's not solely put on the shoulders of the live-in res ed staff.
I would say a couple of things. We have really wanted to make it possible for RAs and graduate staff to make the best decision for themselves without having to think about their money. So we were able to get buy-in from our HR pretty early on that we're going to pay everybody regardless. Our RAs and graduate staff are paid on an annual stipend, which is an average of their hours over the year. So we made that clear that didn't need to be part of that consideration. We've been working off of our spring break staffing model, which means that if you work, you get paid extra. So our current RAs that are choosing to work in hall right now, it's about, I don't know, maybe 15% of our usual number so that we maintain an on-call presentation, are making $50 a day. And they're doing low-level things. They're doing rounds, which we would intend to stop at the point at which we have larger number of cases, either in residence or in the city of Clemson. And then we also made it possible for RAs that wanted to leave and go home to continue to work by doing a version of their position, which is sort of online tasks. And our awesome folks that work with our residential curriculum have created a model where RAs are continuing to create community virtually among their residents that are now far flung across the country. So we've tried to make various ways that they can work and continue to support the mission while still keeping in mind what's best for them at that moment.
For RRAs, we have about 60% have decided to come back to campus as we asked who wanted to return, because we were on extended spring break through last week. And so we had about 60% of them want to return and assist with all the processes of students coming back, students deciding to move out and saying goodbye to for some of them, saying goodbye to some of their residents, as well as going to the online platforms and helping our students make that transition. Our desk assistants who run the community desks, those are the folks that have been really itching to get back and have some office hours. We have many of them who have rent that is due, that have bills to pay, and they're really concerned about where the money is coming from and paying their bills. And so we're doing what we can to provide them some opportunities to work in the communities, as we are not requiring everybody to have to be off campus, although we're strongly encouraging them to go to their primary residence. So we've got 3 desks that are fully operational right now. We intend to expand those as we consolidate into certain buildings. About 9 buildings is what we anticipate, and going from there.
And we have no student staff on campus. They've all gone home. The professional staff, we are taking turns doing rounds in the evening and then checking in with the current residents electronically whenever we can. We have pushed RRAs to do as much digital connecting with their residents as possible. So I've seen program proposals come in. One of them was doing a Connect 4 tournament using Google Sheets, which I didn't know you could do that, but it sounds awesome. And then another one of them suggested doing a resident of the day in their floor group me and letting everybody kind of show off where they're at all around the country. So they've come up with some really fun ideas, as our students always do. And so I'm really enjoying seeing what they're doing to continue building that, even though they're not here on campus.
That's great. And thanks for sharing some of those ideas, Drew. I believe Ian from Central Washington University posted on our online community a bunch of virtual resources for student staff to consider too, to stay in connection with their staff. So you can take a look at that in our online community. All right, and I love the flood of questions that's been coming in. So let's see where we're at and where we can go next. Let's talk about altering the use of our residence hall spaces for potential medical needs. I think that's an emerging topic we've been hearing both in higher education and also just in terms of states planning out extra needs they are planning on potentially needing. If you are an attendee, let's go to our raised hand function. If you are currently in discussions with having some of your spaces be transformed into a medical space, if you could just raise your hand. All right, and right now we've got Yeah, doing math in my head, it's hard. We've got about, I'd say, a fifth of our attendees today are in that situation. Now I'm going to unraise your hands, and if you are in that situation and you'd be willing to talk about it with our group and kind of the experience you're having, if you could raise your hand again, or at least the discussions you've been having about transferring those halls. So Dave, you were the first to raise their hand again. So Dave, I'm going to allow you to talk. So if you could unmute your microphone, introduce yourself, and kind of share what your experiences have been so far.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Dave Sunby. I'm the Director of Residence Life and First Year Experience at Chapman University in Orange, California. For context, we house about 3,700 students in a typical year. We are down now to about 300 students with another 80 or so slated to move out over the next week. A local hospital contacted our Chief Operating Officer and Executive Vice President earlier this week. So discussions are still really early on. We are clearing our residence halls completely. About half of our housing is apartment style, and that's where we'll be consolidating the rest of our residents into individual apartments. So we're looking at what it would take to use residence hall rooms where we all have private bathrooms. That's also, we don't have shared like community bathrooms down the hall. But one of the hiccups we have is something other people are discussing is what do we do for those rooms where students have left items that for now we're leaving in their room? Would we need to move those things to clear more space if hospitals needed it? But we could probably clear up upwards of 1,200. Is that right? No, that's not right. It's like 800 rooms that we could clear for medical overflow if needed.
Thank you for sharing, Dave. Barb, you were second up, so I'm going to see if, Barb, you've got additional items. Sir, Barb, if you could unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and then share what discussions you might have had so far.
Hi there, Barb Remsburg, University of Utah Housing and Residential Education, and we are adjacent to our hospital, and we have a med school. So that proximity, our emergency planning calls for us when students leave to help stand up medical surge, primarily for medical staff. But the state called the other day asking for about 1,000 beds for quarantine spaces. And that we were able to push back on because we already had a connection with our hospital for medical staff. Our on-campus guest house hotel is also hosting medical staff as well. So just seeking to connect as we lean into that. It's a 12-hour on, 12-hour off framework that we're looking at. So just looking to connect if anyone else out there is going down that pathway.
Thanks, Barb. And Ray, I think you've got some experience there, so I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, we're currently in discussions with the local hospital here in Lansing, in both housing medical professionals and possibly in our hotel on campus, and then identifying one of our residence halls for potential, not as a true hospital, but for people that have been exposed, to allow for self-isolation for the community. So we're working right now on that. We anticipate that we still have a lot of hurdles to go through in terms of getting all the technical certifications that we'd need to have in order to do this according to the state.
Thanks, Ray. And thank you also to our audience participation. Thank you for chiming in there and sharing experiences that you're having. Something we heard about briefly there and in our first conversation was the process of reclaiming property or getting belongings out of rooms. We've noticed that many states have moved to a stay-at-home order. In previous conversations this week on virtual roundtables, some states' stay-at-home orders have allowed universities to continue moving students out and have had provisions in that. Some may not. the question really is, what processes are you using at your institutions in terms of getting belongings either packed up, and if you're having someone pack them up and send them to the student, how's that working? Or are you planning on holding those items for students to come back at a later time? What does that look like?
We have, so on the day that the announcement was coming that we were going to be closed for the rest of the semester, I was really glad that I was actually in the Emergency Operations Center that day to be able to say to our chief of police and our emergency leadership, please let's say right from the beginning that we don't want students to come now and get their belongings. The best medical guidance of folks on our team has been that the best way to slow the spread and to bend the curve is to have as few people as possible coming to campus. And since our students were gone on spring break at that moment, and we had already given the opportunity for people that needed to get academic materials to come and do so, we felt really good about the decision to say, no, not now. We will let you know when it's safe to come back to campus, when non-essential travel is more advisable. When we know more about summer school is when we'll really be able to set that process. And we've just been really direct with families to say, we don't yet know when that will be, but we will give you ample notice and we'll create a flexible process to which there will be generous exceptions, but don't come now.
We're continuing to allow students to come on to campus. We had originally identified that April 12th was going to be our deadline to get the refund. What we were hoping to do was spread out the number of people that would arrive back onto campus to get their possessions. So we've been scheduling those and really trying to get students and families to notify us as to when they're coming. And so far that's worked pretty well. An adjustment that we made in our process is that we're allowing third-party vendors to actually come and pack up materials if they have the permission of the roommates to do so. So we've been modifying our own typical checkout processes as a result of the unprecedented nature of this.
At Mississippi State, we have allowed students to continue to store their items that they have left, and we will store them in their current locations in their rooms until May 10th. We're encouraging them just to leave them there and come back later once maybe the crisis has averted a little bit, or we'll extend that deadline as well, modifying our summer camp schedule that we hope will be in place at some point. At this point, we have not restricted students from coming back and getting essentials or packing things up. We've been very fortunate that students and family members have been very scattered, I guess you could say. We have kept the social distancing practices, the no more than 10 people in a particular area practices, and it's been going pretty smoothly in that regard, but really encouraging students just to store in place and come back at another time.
Thanks, Dee. And I know Jenna, you had raised your hand and you had asked some questions about this on the Q&A. So Jenna, if you want to unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and then share your follow-up.
Hi, everyone. This is Jenna. Hopefully you can hear me. Can I get a thumbs up that you can hear me?
Thumbs up.
Start talking? Okay. I don't want to go too far down when I'm talking. So good to see everybody. I just wanted to bring up a question that came up this morning in one of the meetings I was in with Cabinet, and that had to do with certain, we've been receiving contact from students and their lawyers about feeling like we have secured their belongings without jurisdiction and their ability to assert that when the governor has certain edicts, our county health director has certain restrictions. We have 23 different residence halls, 5 different apartment complexes, some of which have exterior entrances to the apartments or the rooms. So therefore, we don't have an ability to monitor nor manage nor ever get in the way, because that's not where we're going to put our staff in space to do that. But I'm just curious if any of you have already started to hear from any of your students about restricting access to their property. They are taking it as a cease of their property when we're taking it under the guidelines of the state to say everyone needs to shelter where they're at, reside where they're at, and not come. And so there's a lot more to it, and a lot of guidelines that aren't as, I wish were more as clear that Kathy, as you put it, where you actually really stated, do not, what this means is you do not come. Unfortunately, when ours went out last Friday, it was families wanted definitely interpret it as if they needed to all race back here and start moving out, when actually that couldn't have been further from what was needed and what was expected. But anyway, I'm just curious if any of the cases are coming up with seizure of property or anything like that.
Of all the calls that we've gotten this week, I don't think we've gotten that one specifically. We did have that conversation on the day that we were making that decision. You know, would if somebody really pushed us on it, what would we say? And we decided that we would double down on our student code of conduct. We have a conduct provision that says failure to comply with the reasonable request of a university official. So as a university official, I have told people that your belongings are secure. We will devise a process for you to come and get them. And our sort of thought process through that is then if somebody comes and we tell them no, that you need to not be here, we could certainly call on the university police, but we would really lean on our student code of conduct. We only have 2 buildings where students can come up and get access directly to their front door, some of our older apartment communities. So for the most part, their Tiger One ID card access has been discontinued, so they can't get into buildings. So just for those couple of apartment complexes, people might be sneaking in the middle of the night to get their stuff, but everybody's got to mind their own karma at some point, I suppose.
Yeah, we definitely have rekeyed entries, and then are in that system to rekey to our summer core right now. But anyway, just curious about the case law, and super helpful, Kathy. Thank you. Well, I think the conduct is a really good way to cite for sure, and we haven't done that. And I think it's a really good idea. Our attorney's going to handle the conversation with the students' attorneys, but for as long as this goes, we also are doing and triaging the medical prescription to mail back to students on a one-by-one basis, as well as their computers and books that they just recently purchased. And so that's taking a lot of good time and effort and care for each of the, as a kind of a concierge or retail kind of one-on-one experience with students. So, but thanks.
I would also say, you know, just for anybody, one of the things that I've appreciated about our emergency operations team is that the folks that are on our university relations team that are there, they've done a really nice job of not making us bear the brunt of all the messaging. So, you know, there was the day that there was the announcement, and then when it was clear that we were getting hundreds and hundreds of phone calls, you know, they put out a university statement that said, no, this is not Kathy Hobgood's decision. This is the decision of Clemson University, and here's why, and provided some more detailed message about, you know, we are indeed all our brother's keeper in terms of complying with good medical guidance, and that helped a little bit. We went to getting dozens of calls instead of hundreds of calls the day after that. So the degree to which your campus messaging can really help you out. It might be something for anybody to think about that's having that problem.
Jenna, thanks so much for raising your hand and supplying some content. I want to take it back to the care role and the connection role. So there's we've had a number of comments, either how are you supporting staff, how are you feeling supports, or how are you rebuilding some of that campus connection and campus spirit. And really, I want to turn it over to the audience for a few moments. And if you are in a situation where you feel like you've got a great strategy in terms of showing care for students or for staff members, or a way to continue the connection in a way that may be new, or, you know, a new method of doing that, I'd just love to have you raise your hand and call on some folks and have them share some of those practices they're using on their campuses. Oh, folks, I'm a little concerned if we don't have ways that we're showing support. Oh, there we go. There we go. Now we're starting to have some come in. Thank you. James, I'm going to have you come on first and share some of those ideas.
Okay. So hi, this is Jim Tweedy. I'm from the University of Delaware, and we've been able to keep all RAs on contract, even though they're not living with us anymore. We made a new offer to them with a brand new position description of what we call a remote RA. They're being asked as part of that job to do 2 individual meetings, or to offer 2 individual meetings with each student on their floor. We are designing opportunities for them to do some virtual floor meetings and activities and some of those different kind of pieces. So I have a team of designers who are putting together my content. And then we also have kept the residence hall coordinators maintaining their same supervision chain in terms of their individual meetings and their staff meetings with their group. But we're trying to really ramp up to quickly build up our expertise on a different kind of resource assistance role with students, because we expect that we're going to get questions about technology. We expect we're going to get a lot more questions from the academic advising sector. We expect that we're going to get an awful lot of questions about our new GPA policies and things like that. So we are quickly introducing a new training program for our pro staff. And I've asked all of my crew to put themselves back in July and August training, and that we're starting the year over. Same kind of deal, kind of like brand new staff building, brand new revisioning, brand new refocusing on all those pieces. But I had, out of my 198 RAs, all but 7 who accepted this new position offer. And so they seem quite excited about it, quite excited to be able to keep their role. And then for the 7 who declined, I'm going to replace those folks with past summer orientation leaders, because it seems to be a little bit more up their wheelhouse. So we've been able to, I think, maintain what we'll call an operational focus and an outreach focus with our students, that we are quite excited to see how it works. You know, it's going to be a mystery to a number of us in terms of if our ideas are going to work or not, but we are trying to really ramp up just a new way of doing that kind of work. And my hope is that for some of the community building kind of pieces we continue to do through online, that it actually may have some application in our future when we're back, everybody on campus, especially for upper division halls.
Jim, thank you so much for sharing that. Outstanding approach. I've already had people message me like, wow, can we hear more about that? So if you could, Jim, if you could go on the Q&A and just put in a best contact info for you, and then if you've got a link to the job description, or if people can just reach out to you, that'd be so great, because I know that raised a lot of ears in positive ways. And in a time when we need some positive ideas, that's some great stuff. So thank you.
Thank you.
And then I also have Pete on the line. Pete, you'd raise your hand if you could share your approach. Or...
Can you hear me?
Yes, we've got
okay.
you.
So I'm at Iowa State, and we have a health and wellness group that put together a set of resources for students that are engaged in self-isolation. I mean, it's a whole ways to have fun, ways to stay connected. And so we've done a direct outreach to everybody who's still living on campus. We provide it to our community advisors, our RAs. And it's a very comprehensive set of resources in order to do this. There's mental health components to it. There's addressing food insecurity for those that might be going through that. There's a whole series of things that we're learning about our students are experiencing because of loss of jobs. We're also keeping all of our staff employed, very limited duties. We did get a mandate from our UHR that it essentially for everybody, it's a no work, no pay. So I think that's been a question some of us had to deal with, that if they're not still employed and working, they can't stay in pay status. So we invited everybody back, and then have really limited things that we had them do. They were managing our express checkout, you know. And then our recreation services has really launched their esports, but it's not just sports, all sorts of ways in which students can connect virtually. And so they've created a program, and we've given them all the contact information for the students that are left on campus. So what we've done is not just reaching out from CAs or hall directors or coordinators. We've asked our health and wellness folks to reach out, our student counseling folks to reach out, our recreation services folks to reach out. And then the last thing is our Inter-Residence Hall Association is still meeting virtually. So the president of IRHA said, we're still having meetings. Also got some emergency legislation that provided funding, and Sydney decided she would stay, continue to try and connect with the 387 students we have living in the residence halls, and continue to make sure that, you know, she's doing reach out from a student leadership perspective. So I mean, I think trying to provide a network, because there's so many different reasons our students are having to stay here. And our international students and scholars office also has that list for our international students that had to stay. So just trying to put a network together. That's maybe the best way to describe it.
Pete, thank you so much. Great content there as well. So Jim and Pete, thank you. Don't worry, you'll probably hear from Akua again after you provide great content like that. Let's see, just kind of scanning through questions that we've had come in, and it behooves us, because this is a senior housing officers discussion. Co-facilitators, if we could just quickly go through, we typically get the question of, are you providing refunds for housing for your students? Are you providing housing and dining prorated refunds? Without going to terribly much depth, if you could just kind of give us a brief update on what that looks like on your campuses, and then we will talk to the audience briefly.
Since we have not announced that we're staying online for the rest of the semester, we haven't made any decisions yet.
We're offering an $1,120 refund for anyone that checks out before April 12th.
Since we've decided to be online for the rest of the semester, I've been asked to do the calculations for 49 days of housing and then a prorated meal plan for folks that don't have access to that because they're not currently here. And we've sent that to our board of trustees for them to make a decision about what the campus policy will be.
The State of Mississippi Higher Ed Association has not made a decision yet, so no refunds at this time. I do anticipate something coming though.
All right, thanks team for sharing. And that's my chance for a shameless plug. So we have our latest ACUI straw poll results coming out tomorrow. We had more than 300 campuses respond to our straw poll. And one of the topics that you will see on there will be those refunds and prorated refunds. So you can take a look at that tomorrow when our straw poll number 2 is released. Super exciting. That's all I can tell you for now, but lots of great data there for you all to digest when that comes out. I do want to be mindful of time we're about 7 minutes to the hour. So what I offer all of our co-facilitators do every time is last words. So a final thought, final tip to share, maybe something personal, like, hey, do this in your personal life, or here's some feedback. So really, it's up to you all co-facilitators. They're getting completely surprised by this. They had no idea this was coming, except for Kathy, who stays up late at night watching our previous virtual roundtables. Thank you for doing that. Our views on YouTube are just skyrocketing because of that. So if each of you could kind of give us a closing thought, and then we'll wrap up for the day.
I'll jump in and share something personal. Right when this was starting to ramp up for me, I was having some chest issues, was a little worried. My fiance said we should go to the hospital. In the end, all the tests indicated that it's probably just stress and anxiety. And there's lots of reasons, because I was also going through a move to a new house and everything else going on. But I think it's important for all of us to check in and take care of ourselves during this time, because it really is unprecedented. And so none of us really know what one day is going to lead to the next day in terms of what new expectations are going to come down from our state, from the federal government, from our institution. And so I think it's important for you all to just check in on yourselves and take care of your staff at the same time.
I agree with Ray 100%. I think that one of the things that I've been grateful for being reminded of during all of this is what a tremendous community of learners that ACUI is for everybody in the time that we spent together. I don't know what I would have done the last couple of weeks without my housing colleagues that I can text or call on, or all of the polls that we've done, all of our use of our sort of personal listservs to say, is this happening with you yet? Does anybody have a sample of this, or what are we having happen here? Has been the key to keeping anywhere close to sanity. So knowing that you're not alone is really important for everybody, but it's also particularly important in your senior leadership roles when everybody's looking to you for answers, to know that you don't have to have all the answers, and that you can work it out together. So hang in there.
Mine is a similar theme, I guess you could say, that Ray started, just taking care of yourself, as well as making sure that staff are rotating as essential staff status tends to take its toll after a while. We're talking about some 30, 40 days at this point that some of our campuses have been dealing with this. And so making sure that our team members are caring for self. And so there's a rotation that's happening as possible, as well as we're doing things to take care of selves, reaching out to friends and colleagues around the nation, as well as not forgetting to exercise and do spiritual meditations and things of that nature that helps us continue to be well. So.
And I would say for me, both personally and professionally, the question I keep asking myself is, you know, what can I appreciate about the differences I'm experiencing, and where can I take those lessons and apply them to things moving forward? So, you know, for example, I've learned I am not a good first grade teacher to my son. He has excellent teachers, and I need to do a better job of appreciating them once things get back to a little more normalcy. At the same time, I've heard restaurants in our small town say, you know, we can't do online orders. We're not going to be able to do curbside pickup. And now that the governor has mandated it, they're doing it, and they're doing it well. Where can we do that in housing? What are changes that we're making to our processes that students are finding to be easier than things we've done in the past? And how can we continue to do those things?
And I'll just say, you know, I try to start off every day and end every day with a walk outside, find some daylight, find some distance from others, of course, who are walking, but really pick up the phone. I call people. Thank God for AirPods. I'll walk around and I'll call someone every morning, every night, just to reach out to other folks, because we still need connection in this field. We still need connection in our lives and our jobs. So keep reaching out. I always encourage folks to journal, write 2 things that happened today, because this is moving so fast that 2 things, it'll be wild to look back even a week. What happened a week ago? I can think of what happened last week. I'm like, wow, that was a week ago. Whoa. And, you know, I think I would encourage us all to prepare ourselves that when this is done, there is really no going back. There's a new normal. There's a new environment that we're all in. And just like Drew touched on, we're learning things in this field that we can do differently, maybe more efficiently, maybe in a total different approach that we're learning right now that will benefit the entire field in the future. Attendees, thank you so much for coming. Our updates that we have moving forward, again, we have that resource page there. Straw poll results are coming out tomorrow. We have another virtual roundtable tomorrow. That's our open forum Friday. So please, any type of staff member you have on your campus, share that with them. It's a great way to connect virtually with others in the field and hear what's going on around the world globally in housing and residence life. And we'll have at least 2 more virtual roundtables next week. We'll be talking about case management on Wednesday, and then on Friday we'll be talking about facilities, and we'll be partnering with a couple other associations on that facilities discussion next Friday, so a week from Friday. So attendees, again, thank you for taking the time to be with us this afternoon. For those questions we were able to answer, excellent. For those questions we were not able to get to, we're going to continue working on providing resources on those topics. Co-facilitators, thanks so much for your time, energy, expertise, content, and just being all around great people. So thanks for hanging out with us for an hour. Be well. We'll be back online soon. Bye, everybody.